I feel like we can all relate to the feeling of being stuck, and more specifically when it's a mental roadblock. This feeling often comes with a lack of motivation or inspiration, negative self-talk, and just a pessimistic view on life as a whole. This video is definitely something that I need to hear, but it's also for the people that need advice on what to do when you don't know what to do. Now, I get this is a big question, and you can answer it a lot of different ways. But I'm here to break down some of the ways you can prompt yourself to figure this out. So you're here to find out what to do when you don't know what to do. And the truth is, I'm still trying to figure that out. I deal with depression and anxiety, being unhappy in a capitalistic job, and just having the human experience, frankly. Our negative self-talk can cause us to endlessly loop on the bad or what we lack. Now, this is understandable with the state of our society and the pressures it puts on everyday life, but it can be hard to know what to do when something in your life is bringing on negative feelings. Or maybe it feels like these feelings have always been there. When you're so used to seeing life through this negative lens, it can be hard to know how to shift into a more positive one. It's always harder to think of the next step when your present thoughts are surrounded by the thing that is causing you stress, which means it's easier to see the bigger picture when your mind isn't the one surrounded by all of the emotions and stress that the situation comes with. I am in no way claiming to be anybody of authority when it comes to telling you what to do with your mental or physical health. I'm just a 23-year-old girl with mental health struggles. We're talking strictly from experience here, so take these steps with a grain of salt as I try to therapize myself and tell you what's worked for me. That's assuming it's worked. We're working on it. It's a journey. You know how it is. So I'm going to lay out a few steps for what to do when you don't know what to do. And the first step is ask yourself what you want. If you don't know what you want, how can you know what direction you need to move in? Number 2, do literally anything. Yes, bitch, I mean literally anything. Step 3, write down your thoughts. Step 4, acknowledge and accept that it won't change overnight. Pausing is part of it. Baby steps are still progress. And number 5, shift your mindset. I like to tell myself, be the energy you would like to attract. So the first step is to ask yourself what you want. This can be something big, like asking yourself what career you want. It can also be something on the smaller side, like what you want when it comes to habits you want to create or get rid of. Let your brain be as free as possible when it comes to asking yourself this. This is a time to take note of what negative thoughts are popping up. The hard thing during this is to view your thoughts without judgment. If we're able to dig deeper through the initial judgments, we start hitting the heart of it, which is our fears and insecurities. Although this seems like something we would want to avoid, digging into our fears and insecurities actually helps provide more clarity for us. There's layers to this, which means you'll have different layers of answers, so bear with me. I tend to struggle with this question, what do you want? Because there's a lot of things I want, but it also doesn't seem sustainable to try to work towards them all at once. So then it seems like the only choice is to pick my top goals and start working towards them. But in order to figure out what your top goals are, you have to sift through an overwhelming amount of choices that seem to have the potential to lead in a lot of different directions. In my brain, I don't want to pick the wrong choice and have it be a waste of time just to get into the future and realize I don't want to do this thing long term. Because then I'm right back at square one of brainstorming what I want with my life. The anxiety of not knowing the outcome makes me freeze up and stay in this space and time. I think the side of this I'm failing to see is why I'm viewing it as a wrong choice or a waste of time to begin with. I'm turning my eye to the fact that if I did choose this potential creative endeavor or whatever it is in your situation, I'm turning my eye to the fact that I would be learning something and gaining knowledge and experience through it. Okay, just play along with me for a second. Say you're on a road trip. The long scenic route, aka life, can be viewed in 2 different ways. It can be viewed as a waste of gas, additional mileage on your car, and time consuming. On the flip side, it can be viewed as a chance to see beautiful sights, a chance to feel present with yourself, and a way to gain new skills you wouldn't have stumbled on if not for the route. When we're viewing life as option 1, we're viewing everything as taking our energy, taking our time, taking our money. And this isn't to brush off things that cause us stress that we have no control over, because there are shitty things that happen to people and y'all don't deserve that. But I'm talking about the small way we can shift our mindset to see the good and have a impact on our lives. Because then we're viewing life in a way of, I get to go on a walk today. I'm blessed to have legs. I'm blessed to be healthy enough to be standing up. Or I get to see my friend. I am blessed with their presence. I get some social interaction, which I've been missing out on. Things can be viewed in very different ways depending on your mindset. Because one thing for you that's hard or brings on negative feelings, that might be something a person wishes they could do. And I feel like it's so easy to get caught up in our own bubble of life and forget that a shitty situation to us might be a pretty decent situation to somebody else, no matter what path I decide to take. I would like to think all my choices would eventually lead me to my ideal outcome anyway. I believe we're drawn to the things that are meant for us, and just because we take some detours, that doesn't change the fact that we end up in relatively the same destination. Just like these paths. We can choose to take one path over the other, and sure, it will bring different experiences and skills depending on each one. But do you see how it all comes back to the same path? We change and grow, but it's our heart that guides us in the direction that feels good. Different routes on the path all lead back to the same goal, which is your happiness and what you want as a person. All of this to say, our mindset plays a huge role in how we move through the world, and we can hold ourselves back in a lot of ways that we might not even realize. I'm going to pose a few questions to get your creative juices flowing and hopefully bring some realizations to the surface for you. So the first question I like to ask myself is, what is a slightly better situation than my current one? For me, I recently went through quitting my job with no plan. I'll link that video like somewhere up in the corner and down in the description too. For me, my headspace in my last job answering this question was I just wanted to find a job that caused me a little less stress and anxiety. Honestly, not much to ask for. That's why it's the slightly better situation. In this hypothetical, I would find a job with better work-life balance that also allows me to create some content on the side. I didn't really care what kind of job it was specifically. I just wanted to focus on what was going to make me feel best. The next question is, if time and resources weren't an issue, what would you do? I think this question kind of just opens up your brain a little bit to view things in a way that you might not allow yourself to. In my case, if all the things that I needed to pay for were covered, I would literally just create all day. I would try out different crafts every week and explore where my skills and passions lie. I would literally do everything. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, because I don't even know what I want to do. So having the time to just figure that out and not be financially responsible, that would be great. I would feel honestly so free. But if I were to ask myself without this question, I wouldn't necessarily think of this because I'm like, well, I don't have all the money and I don't have all the time in the world, so I limit what thoughts come out of my brain automatically. The next question is, what do you feel limited by externally? So personally for me, I know I need to work through my toxic thoughts around money. I feel very consumed and attached to capitalism, even though I don't like it and I don't want to be. Sometimes it feels hard to remove yourself from that when that's how the entire society functions. In order to survive, you need to play into it to pay for your survival, to pay for your basic needs. You have to participate in capitalism. Anyways, we're getting off track here. This makes me question in what ways I can try to exist outside of capitalism and avoid playing a role in the system, if that's possible. Basically, I just need to work through my insecurities with money and my relationship to work and money. Next question. In what ways are you holding yourself back? I think oftentimes I hold myself back before I'm even able to start something, or I will start something and then quickly talk myself out of it. I'm afraid to be bad at something because I'm worried about what people will think of me, and I feel embarrassed by just the thought of being bad at something. I want to challenge these beliefs because I want to grow as a human and a creative, and I can't do that if I'm not even allowing myself to start. So I got inspiration for these questions from Struthless on YouTube. Love his channel, love his videos. That's like free therapy right there. So I'm gonna pop up some of his questions as well. So the first one I really like is, what are 30 solutions? So my partner and I used this prompt when brought with the idea of like wanting to exercise more and just get out and get our bodies moving. And we easily came up with 30 solutions. And I think it's easy to believe there's only one way to do something. And then we tell ourselves, well, I can't do it that way, so I can't do that thing. But it's harder to sit down and ask yourself, what can I do that I haven't done? And it takes time to get over the barriers and be able to acknowledge to yourself what you're actually capable of. Another truthless question is, what would this situation be like if I didn't have any arms? I kind of just think this question just encourages us to think outside of our own bubble and shift our brain into a different perspective. Next question is, what would this look like if it were easy? I feel like sometimes we can talk stuff up in our heads and view ourselves in such a minimized way. And this causes us to automatically say, I can't do that, I'll never be that person. And this forces us to get into a different headspace. And sometimes that's all you need to take a baby step. Okay, the second step to freeing yourself from your current situation is doing literally anything. It could be the smallest thing in the world, but that is you consciously making the decision to unstick yourself from the state of being you're currently in. If you're going through an extra rough phase of your depression and you've been rotting away in bed, scrolling on your phone, wishing you had the energy to do something, the answer is to start with baby steps. And in this case, it might just be taking a shower. This might lead to you feeling up to doing your laundry, journaling, even meditating. But even if it doesn't lead to that, it's important to acknowledge that you made the effort to slightly alter these feelings inside of you. Over time, we are making steps, even if they're small, in the direction of what our ideal situation is. And we should be proud of ourselves for that. So first, let me define what a literally anything is. A literally anything is meant to be a small activity that sparks a good feeling within us. The point is you're intentionally doing something for yourself. So literally anything's include reading a book. I get inspo from content creators. 2 books I've been seeing go around a lot lately is The Artist Way by Julia Cameron and Capitalist Realism by Mark Fisher. I haven't started The Artist's Way yet, but Capitalist Realism, I listened to the audiobook to that, and it was a little above my brain cell capacity. Listen to a creator talk about this book as well. I believe it's American Castles is what his YouTube is. I'll link that down below, but I'm pretty sure he's going through this entire book and kind of just talking through it. So check him out. Going for a walk. 5 minutes can clear your head, gets your body moving, and starts you off on a good vibe for the day. Start an art project. I want you to start this with no expectation of being good and focus on having fun. Pick up your space. This can help with mental clarity and focus. Make a snack for yourself. I know when I'm stressed and feeling depressed, it's easy to forget a meal. So make a snack for yourself, take care of your body, do something nice for yourself. And the last one is spending time out in nature and just out in general. This could be sitting in a park, going on a hike, going to a cafe. Sometimes I think the thing that is stopping us from happiness is our mindset. I like to pretend I can mentally prepare for stuff, but this often keeps me stuck in the feeling of potential anxiety. I'm very guilty of this, but I understand that starting something new can be anxiety inducing. Oftentimes my brain likes to tell me it's impossible because that's easier than imagining myself on the other side of it. I'm currently working through the negative thought pattern of I shouldn't do something because I will be bad at it. Because the possibility of being bad at something kind of scares the shit out of me. But I've been trying to reframe this discussion in my brain that it's okay to not be great at something now, but that doesn't mean I can't strive for greatness in the future. It's always better to do a little something than nothing at all. But if you never start, you're not even giving yourself the opportunity to improve. And this concept applies to both internal and external work. There might be an external goal that we're working towards, and sometimes this can lead to us neglecting ourselves internally, as in our mental health gets not so good. We become so focused on what we want to achieve that we forget sometimes it's the internal work that allows us to achieve externally. Now, it is possible to also become too consumed in something like shadow work. I think the goal of life is being able to find a balance in the external and internal work while still being able to prioritize our mind and bodies. Overall, the goal of literally anything is just to create pockets of happiness and joy and peace in our life. And you might not think you deserve it, but girl, you deserve all the peace and all the happiness and all the good things. You deserve that shit. I deserve that shit. We deserve that shit. You know what I mean? So now that you have an idea of what you want and you've done literally anything, it's time to start writing down your thoughts. The things you learn, the processes that work for you. But instead of writing them and forgetting them, use them as possible steps for you to take for the future. I have a hard time translating my feelings and thoughts into words, so being able to go back and read what I've previously written takes the pressure off trying to keep a million things in my brain at once. And this doesn't have to be exclusive to journaling in a notebook. My partner likes to journal by typing on her computer. I've also really gotten into doing audio recordings. Obviously, I do them for like voiceovers for YouTube, but just having audio recordings for myself to listen back to see like what kind of headspace I was in. This shows my stream of consciousness a little more authentically, I think, than journaling sometimes. I find sometimes when I'm writing, I'll catch my thought and then try to like backpedal on what thought was coming out. And this is before I even get a chance to write it down. So the audio version kind of lets me see how my thoughts play out in real time, when sometimes I feel like I struggle to do that with journaling. So when I say write it down, it can be writing it down on paper, it can be typing it out on your computer, it can be audio messages. Shit, it can even be you creating art about how you feel. You can also use what you've written or created to look back on, and it can help you identify progress that you've made as a human. Although journaling doesn't result in immediate change, eventually it will lead to it. It's hard to know what our subconscious voice is thinking if we're wrapped up in it, but keeping record of our thoughts just lets us see patterns within us that need to be addressed. Using prompts like the ones mentioned previously, or from other creators like Struthless, it sparks your brain to think in ways that you might not necessarily in your day-to-day life. And sometimes you have to convince yourself of things in order to remove the roadblock that is negative self-talk. If we can identify what stresses us out, it gives us an easier chance of creating habits that will ease those stressors. When we try something new and we keep working on it, we become more comfortable and confident in our abilities doing it. I want you to think of something that stressed you out or gave you anxiety in the past, but now it doesn't. So for me, that's when I started my job as a visual merchandiser. I had so much anxiety during my first week of work. I was worried people were going to think that I wasn't qualified for the job or I was doing the tasks too slow. And not to say this job was easy, because I definitely cried on my first day, but fast forward a year later, and I feel like I got pretty good at visual merchandising. I felt more comfortable and confident in the work that I was able to do. I know that in order to grow, it forces us to be in the uncomfortable parts of our being, but it becomes much easier in the long run to sit in those spaces. Being naturally avoidant, it's pretty easy to numb myself to whatever I'm feeling. So it was really hard for me to get substantial thoughts down when I first started journaling. Initially, I started out by writing like just random thoughts, like things I was thinking or like what I did during the day. And I would think to myself, what is the point of this? Like, I'm literally just wasting my time. But I realized I was avoiding what actually needed to be addressed in my brain. I think journaling encouraged me to dig deeper into my brain and look at my thoughts and feelings without judgment. When you have this negative voice in your head, at least for me, I tend to believe it without question. And I think journaling kind of combats this, because when you're able to see the words in front of you, it makes it easier to be like, oh, nah, girl, this is definitely not true. It can also open our eyes to the negative way we view ourselves. When you're able to dig into these thoughts, it helps you to be more secure in yourself. And this is not to say journaling is easy. Diving into hard topics can bring up a lot of triggering and negative feelings. But the feeling of simply understanding yourself does bring that sense of security. The fourth step is to accept that this won't happen overnight. It can be very easy to fall back into negative self-talk, but it's important that we remind ourselves a small step is still a step forward. We need to remind ourselves that it's okay to have a shitty day or spend a whole day in bed. It's easy to get discouraged when we don't see any progress, but I encourage you to pause the next time a bad thought comes up and ask yourself why you might be assuming you're not capable enough. What has happened previously in your life that has made you feel like that? How come we're excited for these baby steps, but not these baby steps? Life isn't only about making progress towards a goal. Sometimes it's being intentional when you rest. I'm convinced that life is just one big game, and the goal we're trying to get to is happiness. And not happiness we think we'll get when we get material things or money. The point is we try to be happy, proud, content with what we are right now. Because if we can do that with what we have now, we won't have to wait to achieve something to allow ourselves to feel that. Obviously, standing in the uncomfortableness of the unknown is, well, uncomfortable. But by intentionally seeking out the uncomfortableness, this creates so much growth for ourselves and allows us to develop the skills that we wouldn't necessarily experience if not for getting out of our comfort zone. It may take us time in the uncomfortableness in order to see progress, but this is why it's important for us to acknowledge our baby steps and actively seek out and find reasons to keep going. And now we're moving on to shifting our mindset. Lastly, what you need when you're feeling stuck in a situation is a mindset shift. I know everyone says fake it till you make it, but it's kind of a real thing. I think we all have things we can work on to bring us happiness and peace. But if you convince yourself you're good enough and capable enough to have the things that you desire, it becomes easier to take the next step. A while ago, I read a book called Untethered Souls, and it talks about seeing your thoughts as something separate from who you are. Just because your brain is producing this negative thought, that doesn't mean you have to believe it. And most of the time, this doesn't have validity. We are able to hear the thought, but not let it control how we respond to it. My brain has a bad habit of viewing life through a negative lens, but what would happen if that flipped and we started assuming the best? Sometimes life just feels like a game of trying to convince your brain of things. Especially for all my people who deal with mental health, our brain has a tendency to just feed us these negative thoughts. And most of the time, these thoughts don't reflect our reality or capabilities. So next time your brain tells you something's impossible, show that bitch what's up and challenge the initial thoughts that come automatically to you. The goal is to be able to think through and ask ourselves why we do things from a non-judgmental standpoint. We have so many automatic responses that tear us down rather than build us up. We have to be there for ourselves first and foremost, because if we go into friendships and relationships expecting somebody to be able to do that for us, it can play out in a not great way. So that's about it for what to do when you don't know what to do. If you enjoyed it, you know what to do. Like and subscribe, girl. Do the things, comment down below. Someone start a conversation with me down below. If you want to answer some of the questions I proposed today in the comments, I'll be excited to read them. And I would just love to have a little chat with you. So thank you for watching. And sorry I sound like this. Sorry about it all, but this is kind of just what you get. So have a good night or day. Have a good life.